So, I've just read chapter 14 of Plagueis. Funnily enough, this chapter only mentions Plagueis quite frequently, but he doesn't appear at all in this chapter, which is a first for the book. But and I assume it will happen a few more times as well. Anyway, this is very much a politically driven chapter, so this video probably won't be too long. I still have got no sketches here for you all though, so yeah, keep that in mind. Might keep that in mind, I don't know. So just don't keep it in mind then, I'm losing track of what I'm saying. So this chapter is pretty much going into the disputes that the Trade Federation is having with Naboo. How they are basically making the shipping price of the plasma that Naboo has just unreasonably high, and they're getting much more money than they are paying out to money from the shipping than they are by actually getting the plasma. So Senator, what was it? Female Kim or something like that? Is it female? Vidar Kim, not female. Sorry. So Vidar Kim, who is Naboo's senator, is wanting to basically abolish the Trade Federation and the Trade Federation's negotiations with Naboo, and for Naboo to transport its plasma independently. And so there is of course quite a bit of dispute that goes on and talks, and Palpatine says that he doesn't, that's a corporation like the Trade Federation, whose main goal is to in politics to take control of all trade routes, is that well, they shouldn't be able to get to as much power as that they are striving for, and that Naboo has no plans of planetising the Trade Federation's facilities, but they just want to renegotiate the deals with the Trade Federation. Hang on, let me skim through that little bit of the chapter actually, because I'm starting to lose where I was. You had it in mind ago. And he also talks about how, and then Senator Tarkin, not the same as Grand Moff Tarkin, I assume this is either his father or grandfather, says that he thinks a defeat in the Senate might make the Trade Federation a bit more flexible, and Palpatine brought up that only those that supported well-reasoned laws should win approval in the Senate. And Palpatine was actually waiting for someone to point out he had offered pretty much nothing of substance, aside from maybe the renegotiation. That was already something that Kim was already kind of trying to do. He was already trying to abolish, the Trade Federation from Naboo. So then a little bit later on, Kim finds out, and then just as pretty much the meeting comes to an end, Kim finds out his wife and two of his sons, except his Jedi son, has been killed in a starship crash, which I assume is probably going to have something to do with Plagueis or something like the Trade Federation. Maybe the Trade Federation are picking up on him or something, and they're trying to get him to be removed from power so that they can keep Naboo. That's just theory on my part though, when reading the book. So then we have Oz Varuna, pull Palpatine away during Kim's during the funeral for Kim's wife and sons, and he talks to Palpatine a bit about the negotiations about the talkings on Malasta, and forgot to mention, Palpatine is the ambassador of Naboo at the moment in the book, so good for him, I guess. But Varuna's talking to him about how if they cut off from the Trade Federation a lot of King Talapo, so Talapo did Tapalo. Sapalo? You know who I'm talking about. Tapalo. There we go. That's how I usually pronounce it. Tapalo. How if they cut off connections with the Trade Federation and amassed holdings, the views on him and views on Tapalo will kind of not turn out the way that's desired, I guess. Hold on. But here we go. But the people that, but if the Trade Federation is disconnected from Naboo, then a lot of the person responsible for Tapalo's election and his party and his party's continued popularity is not really going to take too kindly to hearing that Naboo has voted against as Varuna puts it, the very legislation to mass holdings have been lobbying to enact, so the very laws that they have been trying to seek, that they've been trying to influence into action. Palpatine, of course, he's not quite a senator yet. He's still not fully well-rounded in the verse, but Varuna's kind of there to help as a bit of a guide, and he asks why not order Senator Kim to vote in favour of the Trade Federation, and Varuna just wishes it was that simple, because the problem is that Varuna and Tapalo have arrangements and with the Trade Federation, they have their own separate ones, and Kim intends to use this to send a message to the Trade Federation, as well as Tapalo's detractors, that Naboo will no longer allow itself to be exploited, and that recalling Kim from Coruscant would be pretty much just as, that would be basically, they would just as well, it may just as well be admitting that Naboo remains at the mercy of the Trade Federation, and that the Trade Federation can continue to exploit them, and that could jeopardise their standing with many of the trade worlds that have become dependent for Naboo. And so Palpatine pretends to consider, and actually comes up with, I'd say, a fairly genius idea, where he says perhaps it would be worth to risk voting against the Trade Federation, as whether the legislation is enacted or becomes embroiled in procedure. As he says, Naboo's contracts with the Trade Federation will be forced to continue, and the Federation will continue getting the plasma from Naboo for only a small sum in their eyes, and marketing it for, again, inflated prices, but it would then put Naboo in the good books of the public, having stood up against a greedy company. And he does say that he does say to Varuna to tell Magister Damask, Ego Damask the Second, which is Darth Plagueis, that this is the course of action they're going to be taking. And yeah, that's really it to the chapter. I thought this was going to be a shorter one, apparently wasn't. It's just as long as, it's just about an average length of a review now. But I personally enjoyed the chapter. It had a bit of a slow start, but I think it was mainly just because I wasn't that motivated to continue with the book. After for me, what was the disaster of chapter 13. Look again, sorry James, you know, I am personally not a fan of his complex and cryptic and at times cryptic writing when he's trying to write for what's, in my opinion, a part of the book that is vital to understand and or important to try and understand, and I don't think his writing works in those situations of especially particularly in dedicated chapters to that. But other times it works perfectly fine. Like this is I think this is an important chapter, and it works really well. But I think it's just dependent on the context and the abundance of those words, to which there weren't that much in this chapter, which I think made it a bit more digestible. Anyway, that is my thoughts on chapter 14, which is chapter 2 of 9, a part 2 of Plagueis. And I'll be going on to chapter 15 quite soon. You probably won't be seeing the review for that too shortly after this one. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and goodbye.